Did you ever get any fist fights when you were a kid?
I've never been.
You had a sister. You never got in a fight with your sister?
Not once.
You never punched your sister?
No, I've
Did she
never
ever
thrown a
punch
punch
you?
in my life.
She ever punch you?
Nope.
Who would win? You or your sister?
My sister for sure.
Maybe that's why. Maybe. What's up, everybody?
Welcome to the Uncomplicated podcast.
Look at all these questions. You submitted these questions. These are great questions. I know life can feel complicated, but I don't think God and faith is supposed to be.
Yep. So let's
Mix those up if you want. We haven't got to read through all of them. Let's just take them and see where we go.
Let's go on a journey together. Is it wrong to be okay with your boys fighting out their ongoing conflict supervised?
What a question. Who submits this question? Is it okay to let my boys fight each other supervised?
Yeah.
The question behind the question is it
wrong?
okay
Is it wrong
to call your sons together and their friends and organize an underground backyard
that's
fighting?
That's not what it says. It says
it's okay if it's on a trampoline. That's okay. If it's on a trampoline, which is like flying Street Fighter moves, it's okay. Did you ever get any fist fights when you were a kid?
I've never been.
You had a sister. You never got in a fight with your sister?
Not once.
You never punched your sister?
No, I've
Did she
never
ever
thrown a
punch
punch
you?
in my life.
She ever punch you?
Nope.
Who would win? You or your sister?
My sister for sure.
Maybe that's why. Maybe. I didn't have brothers or sisters my age that I could fight.
Yeah.
So
you were way 20 years younger than all of them.
So who's asking this question? Give me a scenario here.
I'm gonna go with it's a dad.
Okay.
And his boys keep fighting, and I guess letting the fight continue till resolution is what he's asking.
Letting it continue.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, I think it's okay. Is it wrong to be okay with your boys fighting out their conflict? So my guess would be they're in a fight. It turns physical.
You know what's crazy? I think about my sons. I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. They never get in physical fights. I wonder if it's because of the age gap, though. Like if they were twins, do you think they'd be swinging at each other?
Honestly, sometimes I think it's personality.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know, but I think there's personalities that are a little bit like.
Some of the best UFC fighters have brothers their own age and they grew up fighting each other. And a lot of times both of them are in the UFC. There's like 3 different duos that are brothers. Yeah. And in jiu-jitsu where they were like twin brothers or, you know, I think about the Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate Diaz. I think about the Rotolos. I think about different, you know, they were brothers. They grew up just handling business. Every time they got in a fight, they probably just threw down until the other one won.
So they became professional fighters.
Yes. So dad, if your son is a diamond in the rough, if you got a star in the making, there you go.
Maybe it's okay.
But is there any kind of biblical worldview behind this? Do we have any stories about Jesus getting in a physical fight? Or maybe his disciples physically fighting. Is there any story where Jesus' disciples were fighting and Jesus like stepped back and just let him finish it out? And he's like, whoever wins, wins?
Not that I can recall. I don't see a lot.
Have you ever been in a physical fight, Maria?
Never.
Okay. All right.
Never. I would lose. I would run. I would like try to hug him and pray, and that would be all I could do. Because
I've never met a man who hasn't been in a physical fight that I can think of. So there's a weird thing that happens with guys after they get, do you know about what happens after a guy gets in a fight? Do you know about this phenomenon?
It's weird.
It's a phenomenon.
It is absolutely bizarre because I have seen guys fight and then they hug.
Yes.
And it is the most baffling thing to me because if anyone punched me,
let me see this.
I would never want to speak to them again.
Is it wrong to let your boys continue fighting?
Yeah.
So this is like a dad who's watching his sons fight.
Right.
And he probably wants to step in and stop it. Or the mom might want to step in and stop it.
Oh, the mom for sure wants to stop it.
And then the dad's like, honey, just let them handle it. Just let them handle it. They're just boys are being boys. Is that okay? This is a good question. This is a good question. Or does the dad throw them some boxing gloves and help it be less violent?
It's supervised, it says.
The supervising part creeps me out. It's like the dad's just standing back like, go for the kidney.
I think the supervised is so it doesn't get out of hand is my guess.
It's supervised because if he starts pulling hair, he's like, no, boys don't do that. That's why it's supervised.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, if we go back to like the biblical, do we have any biblical evidence for this being okay? I mean, Jesus says things like, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
You know,
but he's talking about a Roman like oppressor.
Sure.
And you like protesting or you like basically you can't fight a freaking Roman. So it's not like 2 boys that might be more equal.
Correct.
Right.
But when it came to any, like, I think violence and this is like the only thing I can kind of equate it to. The only other like violent thing I remember, other than obviously Jesus being tortured as he went to the cross and didn't fight back, is when Peter cuts off the guy's ear and he's like, Peter, like, why'd you do that? You know, there was a little bit of reprimanding. Yeah. Like, why would you be violent in this scenario? So those are the 3 scenarios where
he didn't have to put the ear back on.
Well, he also wasn't like, good job, Peter. You protected me. He was like, dude, what are you doing?
That's true.
You know, so
you remember what he said after that?
Moments.
Do you remember what he said to Peter after that? He goes, I could call down thousands of angels and just smoke all these guys. I'm being gentle.
Right. And gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit.
I was thinking that, yeah.
I know there's this guy thing, and I don't get it, and I never will, and that's okay, where it's like, dude, we got to just fight it out, and like, that seems to work. It's
kind of primal.
I don't see any like Jesus endorsing of it. But I don't think it would like work. 15, I just don't know if it's biblical.
When I was 15, I got in a gnarly physical fight with my buddy. Yeah. And it was violent. And afterward, we were best friends. Went to his house right afterward, and we played Sega Dreamcast. And everything was cool after that. Yeah, we were never closer. It's intimacy. It's like when 2 guys get in a physical fight, it's like when a couple has makeup sex. That's what it is. You know, that's like, weird. You know when you have makeup sex after you've been fighting and like you feel like really intimate with that person? When guys are fighting and then they just duke it out, afterward they're just like BFFs.
That's a weird, like.
It's true.
Okay.
It's true. It's 100% true. Guys have to learn what to do.
What you're saying is that they don't actually have to physically fight. They can just fight emotionally.
Negative.
And
guys don't know how to fight emotionally. Guys don't know how to fight emotionally that enough. Okay, look. Are these 8-year-old boys, let's say, are they going to grow up? Are they going to be angry again?
Are they 8 or are they 15? Like, we don't know the scenario here. They could be teenagers that are fighting. You know, they could be little boys. What are you as a parent telling your kid endorsing it, and at what age?
I grew up fighting. Like, I was in martial arts since I was 10 years old. Yes. My weekends, like, were in tournaments, fighting as hard as I could against other kids.
Right.
With pads on. And there was a referee, and he would stop us.
Sure.
Right? And I grew up doing jujitsu and, like, learning how to bend somebody's arm to the point of breaking and then stopping it or choking somebody out before they. So I know what it's like to have self-control.
Right.
Part of being a dad is teaching your kids how to have self-control. So if this dad is saying, I'm going to supervise it and I'm going to help them get out their aggression in a sport-like manner, not in a violent manner, but I'm going to help them learn, there is something to be said. If it's supervised, like I'm going to make sure that they don't pick up a brick and hit each other or stab each other, or if it's I'm actually helping train you to deal with this very real thing where men have a masculinity that can get toxic or abusive real fast or violent if they don't know how to have self-control, this could be a great dad right here. Yes or yes? Yes or no? No? My sons never fight each other, so I don't really know. I've never been in this situation with my own sons.
Yeah, if our older son punched our younger son because he was upset with him,
what
would you do?
My son knows exactly what would happen.
What would happen?
What would happen would be discipline would happen. Yes. But if my younger son kept maybe like poking my older son or doing something, and my older son kept having grace and like letting it slide, and then one day my older son just punked him because of what he did, and he ran to me and he's like, Dad, your oldest son just beat me up. I'd say, well, what did you do to kind of provoke him? And then my older son was like, well, he just wouldn't leave me alone. Part of that's like, son, you have to learn not to poke the bear. You can't just do that to people who are bigger than you. And so that's also part of training him too. You can't just, you can't, that scales. I mean, in life, you can't just be a little brat and think you're going to get away with it.
Though, that you're talking about. And
what goes around comes around.
True. But back to like, you're like, I grew up doing martial arts and it was controlled and it was supervised and it's an art form. 2 people didn't have issues or conflict and were both engaging in that without some sort of underlying issue. And I think sometimes men may not figure out the underlying issues, resort to physical contact, feel better, but really never take care of the heart issues or the hurt issues. And so is it
listen,
it beneficial? Then I'll leave that up to you.
What are you going to do if you're stressed out? Right? That's a big question.
Sure.
There are guys that get bullied and then that comes out a bad way, right? So how do you channel your stress? How do you get rid of the stress, right? Some people, they just bury it down. And so, some people self-medicate. I mean, and some people go to the gym. I mean, so I think the dad here, it's really about what the dad's plan is. What's the purpose of supervising this? Because you might not be able to get your sons to stop. They might just go fight when they're not around you. Right. You know what I mean? So it might just be like...
Or they might start fighting depending on their age. Like, how formational are their years right now where they think, oh, I can just fight. Dad's good with it everywhere. You know, if they're older, they know. But if they're younger, they might. So just things to think about.
Just put your kids in martial arts. I mean, honestly, the other day, my son was at the mall and some kid threw food at them and they were trying, and it was like my oldest son and like 4 of his buddies and like 2 kids. And they didn't do anything. And Logan like didn't feel like he needed to respond to it because he's got his black belt and he's been in hundreds of fights and he's you know.
He knows that he's supposed to diffuse everything,
the other day, I watched him
escalate it.
tap out a 20-year-old kid 7 times in a row. Yeah. Like I watched him tap him out like easy. Like Logan's not insecure about his ability for combat, you know? And then afterward, he was like, he goes, yeah, we just decided to leave it alone. And I'm like, good, because the only reason why 2 kids would pick on 4 kids is because they have a weapon. You know what I mean? Like they were provoking you because they wanted to get into trouble. They had an itch they were trying to scratch. They had something going on. Maybe they had a dad in their house that was beating them up, and then now we're trying to, you know what I mean? And I love that he had some, you know, he had the wherewithal, he had the security, you know what I mean? But he also had the training, you know, to not, you know. So
maybe put your kids in martial arts.
Put your kids in martial arts. That's the answer. Yeah. Is it wrong to be okay with your boys fighting during their ongoing? It's wrong to be okay if you think you're a good martial arts instructor and you have no combat experience. It's wrong to think you're qualified to supervise this. Get somebody around your boys. Get that diamond in the rough. Get that star in the making. Learn how to. So, anyways, but also teach your son that if he picks on somebody, the wrong person, he's gonna catch hands. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are on the edge, who will light somebody up if you provoke them. So you got to teach them to have self-control on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
All right. Good answer to that question.
Do you want to start reading or listening to the Bible, but you have no idea where to start?
I get the question all the time. I don't know the translation. I don't know where to even begin. That's why we made the 21 Days of Momentum Challenge. How many chapters are in the book of John?
21.
1 chapter a day, small podcast episode. You go through all 21 days. You take the challenge. What happens?
I think your life will be different. You will have hope for your day. You will have a security in hearing the voice of God.
So take the 21-day challenge today on the UNcomplicated app. Just look at the link in description or search your app store.
Next question. Is it okay to be a Christian with obsession?
Obsession?
Are we supposed to be meek? I think what they're saying is...
Are we supposed to be meek?
What will people think if they hear that I'm a Jesus freak? Shout out to DC Talk. I think that's what they're saying. Like, if I'm a Jesus freak, I'm obsessed with Jesus, I'm radical, is that okay? Or as a Christian, am I supposed to be meek?
No, I think it means, is it okay to have a bunch of possessions? Is it okay to be a Christian with obsession?
No, it's not possessions, it's obsession. It's like being a radical Christian, I think.
The word meek is a very debated word. What did Jesus mean in Matthew chapter 5 when he said, blessed are the meek, they will inherit the earth? There is a lot of discussion about what that word meek means.
Let's talk about it.
Well, there are people who believe, well, I don't want to get all that. What does this person think that meek means? Does this person think meek is a personality?
I think most of the time people think meek is a personality.
Okay, but why would Jesus say blessed are the meek if it's just a personality, right?
Right.
So, you know, what does that mean, meek? What is it common? Ask ChatGPT, would you mind? What is the common definition of meek? Because what Jesus said in his original language that was then translated probably into Greek, which was then translated into English, may not be the exact thing that this person thinks. So what this person thinks is important. Is it okay to be a Christian with obsession? And that means they're thinking passion. I'm
thinking radical.
Yeah,
you know?
Is it okay to be just a Jesus freak? Or are we supposed to be meek, laid back, play it cool? You know?
All right. What does chat say?
What's Chatty Patty say?
The most popular and widely accepted definition of meek is humble, gentle, and patient, especially when enduring hardship or being provoked without resentment.
Humble, gentle, patient are all fruit of the Spirit. Right? So the scriptures teach in Galatians that, you know, this pastor Paul was telling people, hey, when you're nailing it and the Holy Spirit's really helping you, you are patient with people. You are slow to anger. And you are humble, you're not prideful, and gentle, which gentleness is not about being weak. Gentleness is about having power and restraining it, right? So this are we supposed to be meek doesn't make sense with obsession, because you can be gentle and be passionate. You can be patient and be passionate, right? Strategic. And you can be humble and be passionate. So see, that's why I don't really understand the question.
Yeah, I think what they're saying is, can I be radically obsessed with Jesus and meek? I think a lot of the times people think a personality is meek. And I think just bringing clarity to what meekness is, it might
what do you think they mean? Do you think they mean?
Normally you think humble, gentle. Meek, you kind of think almost like more introverted, reserved.
Totally. Soft.
Reserved. No, not soft, just reserved.
Okay, reserved.
I don't think.
Not outgoing? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I said more introverted, more reserved.
So what would you tell this person?
I would say,
I'm passionate about God. I want to tell everybody.
Be passionate. Being meek is being humble, gentle, and what was the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can be both.
Recently, we were at Disneyland in a long line. I think you know where I'm going with this story. We had a great day of crushing roller coasters, but now we're in the longest line. I'm thinking, how long was that line?
90 minutes, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Right, nightmare. We're like doing push-ups, having push-up contests.
Yeah, we're just
but I like to talk to people in line, but I'm also conscious that if I talk about faith in line with strangers, they might feel trapped in that line going, I don't want to have a conversation with this guy and I'm stuck here and I can't. I just came to ride Space Mountain. I didn't come to talk about the Christ. So I think that might be what you're talking about.
So instead, he wrote an inspirational post on Instagram about Jesus.
Oh, I shared my faith. I talked about Christ before we left. I waited to the very end, though. Remember? I waited to the very end.
So funny is me and Logan, we're just watching you, and he's like, he's itching. Is he going to pray with them? He has this thing. He's going to pray with them before he leaves Disneyland.
Well, I did. I wanted to. She said something really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they said, we really like, I've been secretly watching you and your wife and your kids, and you have such a, wonderful marriage and kids or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was able to say, well, honestly, it's God. And I said these 3 are nightmares, but we're doing great. I was like joking around, but and she's like, really, kind of like, and I said, we're Christians. And I told her, so we met in Bible college. We've been married almost 20 years. And she's like, oh, that's so nice. I hope we get to say goodbye before, 90 minutes in a line with somebody. That's a relationship builder. I mean, so it was a nice little moment. I mean, I want to give God glory, credit for what he's done. Obviously we wouldn't be here 20 years into marriage. How long have we really been married?
It'll be 19 years this month.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This month?
Yeah.
Get on it, Justice. All right, next question.
All right, 3 years of asking God for help. He seems to help everyone but me. How do I keep my faith?
Everybody can relate to this question.
Totally.
3 years of asking God for help.
Yeah.
What do you think they're asking God for help with? What are some of the most common things people ask God for?
Some of the most common things, I think, is like a financial breakthrough, some sort of relationship, whether it's like help in your marriage or you're single and some sort of relational help.
Yep. Health is
another one. Yeah.
So let's say 3 years you've had a health crisis and you're like, God, will you please heal me? Or maybe 3 years you've been really struggling financially, you can't get ahead, right? Or maybe you're in a relationship, you're married, and it's just getting worse, and you're like, God, I'm doing everything I can, but I need you to step in. 3 years is a long time to be praying for something and not see a miracle.
Yeah.
So, first of all, way to go. 3 years, that's a lot of faith.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the scripture that talks about those that wait upon the Lord, how he gives them strength. It's in Isaiah chapter 40. He says, when you wait on the Lord, he actually makes you stronger. Waiting is not supposed to make you weaker. Right. Waiting is supposed to make you stronger. Because if you hold on, your faith will grow.
Yeah.
If you stick this thing out and you get to the other side, I've said this before, it's kind of cheesy, but we're always tempted to break down before we break through. But if you don't break down, you don't give up, you hold on, you're going to see God be exactly who he always has been, which is faithful and good. He will come through. He'll carry you through this thing. There's so many promises about the redemption of God where he'll take things that were going bad and he'll turn it around for you. So yeah, I mean, if it's just a practical bit of advice, I would say don't do it by yourself. Anything.
Yeah. I think there's some times in my walk with Jesus where I've felt like, why isn't he coming through? And there's just a few practical things now that I've been following Jesus a long time. I go back to just kind of like go through things to help my journey. One of them is like, what's the last thing God did tell me?
Interesting. Yeah.
Because sometimes God speaks and oftentimes it's not something I want to hear. Yeah. And so I can ignore it or forget about it. And
I have a great story about that.
And I think sometimes that going back saying, okay, what's the last time I heard God's voice? What was he telling me?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that he was telling you how much he loves you, and you need that like God reminder because you forgot and he did speak to you. So I think that's really important. The other thing,
can I jump in with a story about that's
sure.
really practical?
Yeah.
So I have a friend who was praying for a new job because they had quit their last job. Best advice usually is to line up another job before you quit.
Unless the Lord tells you to.
Yeah. So, and basically the conversation was, well, you've been waiting for a new job for a long time. What's the last thing same advice, what's the last thing God told you to do? And he's like, well, the last thing God told me to do was to go back and apologize for the way that I quit to those people that I knew at that job because I didn't leave on a good note. And I'm like, so you're telling me the last thing you heard God to do was to go reconcile, ask forgiveness, and patch things up. And you really think it's a surprise that God hasn't given you a new job?
Yeah.
And you haven't followed through with the last thing he told? So how practical is that?
Super practical.
What wound up happening is, I believe the story goes, they did, because of that prompting, go back, follow through with what God told them to do. And then sure enough, God came through and trusted them with the job. I think a lot of times we're over here asking God to come through on something that we've asked him to do, and he's kind of waiting for us to come through on something he's asked us to do. And that actually lines up sometimes. It's like, well, on the other side of obedience, there's the miracle.
Yeah. I think too, one thing that I've done that has helped me just get through hard times is really making sure my prayers align not with my will, but with his will.
Yeah.
And so praying,
that's hard to do, though.
It's so hard to do, especially when you feel like you're in it.
Yeah. That's
you're
why
in
Jesus
the
says,
struggle.
pray his kingdom come, his will be done.
100%.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we go like, nothing's going my way. And the Lord would just say like, well, I want it to go my way because my way's better. And so I don't know if that speaks to you or encourages you, but I know along the way I've had those moments where I'm going like, man, I'm trying, I'm giving it all I got. God, where are you?
Yeah.
And God's like, I'm over here.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes when God's not blessing something, that's a really good indicator that that's not the right way to go.
Sometimes.
I remember there's this guy and this girl, young adults, they were fighting all the time. They were dating. And they weren't engaged. They were just boyfriend, girlfriend. And I remember you said something so brilliant. You looked at them and you're like, guys, it's not supposed to be this hard when you're dating. You guys are fighting for something. You know what I mean? Maybe this is not the way it's supposed, you're like, and they broke up. And that was the best thing they ever could have done. It's like you're over here praying, God bless this relationship. And God's like, that's not the relationship I have for you. I have no intention on blessing and helping this relationship because this is not the person I have for you.
Yeah.
Man, sometimes it's, if you're married, it's completely different. Correct. If you're married, you fight for that sucker. Yep. You know what I mean? You made a covenant with God. But if you just find yourself just fighting all the time with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you're not
the right person.
Yeah, maybe quit while you're ahead. Maybe God's not blessing it because it's not his plan.
Yeah. Ask God for his plan and see if that might help your faith grow a little bit.
What else we got? We got time for one more question?
Yep. Why isn't there crosses at Freedom or majority of Christian churches?
Why isn't there crosses at Freedom? Okay, so if you're new to the podcast, we pastor a church. It's called Freedom.
Yep.
And there are no crosses, now that I think about it.
In the auditorium?
Actually, I shouldn't say now that I think about it. I've gotten this question before.
Yeah.
But I don't think about this a lot.
We had one once.
It's not intentional. It's just we have a giant warehouse that has been turned into a super sweet auditorium and kids facility. It's not... doesn't have a steeple on it, you know what I mean?
No stained glass either.
Yeah, so it just feels more, I don't know, like it feels more like a multi-purpose space, that we use on Sunday for worship. I think sometimes people think of buildings as sacred, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but what's sacred about church is the presence of God, in among people. I don't think a church is when people aren't in there. It's not like the presence of God is just, it's not like God's in there like waiting for everybody to come back. It's not, I think a cross can be important because it identifies that it's sacred and it's dedicated. It's a sanctified, spot. It's supposed to be, but it's not, we want it to feel common, but at the same time, the cross is not what makes it, that's decor in a lot of ways. It's an indicator of it's reserved. It's for this, but we also you rent that place out to a lot of things. I mean,
right.
we rent
well,
out
every Wednesday it turns into a pantry.
Yeah.
You know, we've got
Yeah.
hundreds of cars coming through our property, and literally all the chairs are moved. And there's lines.
The other day, our council member was there having a huge forum where it was like the two different city council members were like debating, and like we were able to host that for our city. And I thought that was really cool. And I wonder if they would have done that if it was at a church. Because if it was at a church, it might have felt like it was a Christian thing when it was really just a place for assembly for some important decisions for our city. You know, every time a church is mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned by the name of the city. So, you know, even in Ephesus, it says that Paul rented a hall, a city hall, to use for his church, right? The biggest, you know, city he was in, he did not have a building with a steeple. He had a community center that he rented, and it said he rented it for years. And so, yeah, I think maybe we go in going, why doesn't it have a cross? It'd be more spiritual if I had a cross. I would just push back on that a little bit. Like, what makes it spiritual is the presence of God. And I'm not against having a cross on there.
I think we would agree that a cross, man, we thank Jesus for the cross.
Yeah.
Like, we love the cross, but we just, not in the decor.
There's nothing, there's no more powerful symbol or icon in the world than the cross. Yeah. Absolutely.
100.
Yeah. But do you catch what I'm saying? Like, maybe we wouldn't be able to have moments like the city council kind of forums and stuff like that if it was at a church, if it felt like a, you know, our sign says the Freedom Center. It doesn't say Freedom Church.
Yeah.
Because it's used more for community stuff than it is used for Sunday services.
Well, I think too, we always wanted to teach people that like the building isn't the church, we are the church.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe because we wanted to teach our congregation that like they see themselves as the church, not like, oh, that's you guys, or that's the church. It's like, no, we're the church. We bring heaven to earth because of Jesus. That we've always just kept it more of like a community center.
Good question, though.
Yeah. So that's why.
Yeah, I've gotten that question quite a bit.
Have you?
Actually, I've gotten a question a handful of times, and I just keep forgetting that like people sometimes see.
Yeah, it makes sense in different traditions.
Yeah. Because especially in other traditions, the more relics and icons you have, the more spiritual it is. So yeah.
Totally. Is that it for today?
Last question.
Last question. How do you discern between the increasing time with Jesus versus the doing? So spending time with Jesus versus serving.
All right. When are you not spending time with Jesus? Let's just start there. Are you ever really not spending time with Jesus?
I think you spend
what does that mean?
Intentional and unintentional time. So I think what they might be talking about is the intentional time, meaning like I'm going to read my Bible in the morning, or I'm going to pray, or I'm going to listen to worship music and be quiet before God. I think that's like the time with Jesus that they're referring to.
Versus serving.
Versus like, I'm going to be the hands of Jesus.
Let me ask you this. What's more spiritual? Sitting with somebody who's grieving or reading the Bible and drinking coffee and journaling? What's more spiritual? Visiting somebody in prison or reading your Bible with a highlighter and memorizing flashcards of Galatians, Ephesians, Romans? What's more spiritual? Feeding somebody who's hungry or going to a church service? What's more spiritual? Somebody who is struggling to make ends meet, and you go buy them a ton of groceries, drop it off at their house anonymously, or going to life group?
You don't want me to give you the answer because you know that I know the answer. So
Matthew 25, Jesus says, where were you when I was hungry? Where were you when I was thirsty? Where were you when I was naked, didn't have clothes? Where were you when I was sick? Where were you when I was in prison? There's 6 different things that Jesus talks about. He goes, where were you when I was out there struggling? And then everybody goes, why would you say, where were you when we did those things? We didn't know those were you. And then Jesus goes, no, that's where I was. And he identifies, he's like, I identify with those that are suffering. You want more of me? I'll tell you where to find me.
Go find me there.
Go find me there. Yeah. And so I think a lot of times we have this kind of backwards view that alone time with God is more spiritual than time with people who are hurting.
Yeah.
And clearly you need both.
Yes.
Jesus did both, but let's not make one more spiritual than the other. And if you do, I would make Matthew 25. That's where Jesus' presence really is, you know? Yeah. So not that it's not in the alone time with you.
Right.
But yeah.
But I think too, sometimes reading the Bible on your own in the mornings, like if I'm honest, I don't know if it's like this big presence of God moments for me where it's more just like, I'm doing this because he is the foundation of my day and I'm going through it. And it's like, sometimes feels like a check check mark off my day. I started my day with Jesus.
Sure.
And it's not this like amazing time of like the presence of God. But man, when I'm serving, like I feel you that's why you need both. I feel the presence of God in those spaces where he will send you. But I do need to know the word of God and I do need that time. But I would in my own journey say that like I sense the presence of God more while I'm serving than in my alone times with him.
If we look at the life of Jesus, he did both, right?
Right.
He got away.
Yeah.
People couldn't find him. Where was he? You know, it says, I love Luke chapter 11. It says, when Jesus was in a certain place praying, after he was finished, the disciples came to him and asked him a question. And you just see right there that like Jesus had a habit, a discipline of getting away and being alone with the Father. Before he called the 12 disciples and he picked them by name, it says he was praying all night and asking God something before a big decision, starting off your day. Dedicated times, quality time with God is important. But I bet you Jesus spent a lot more time serving than doing that. Right?
For sure.
He didn't say the Son of Man came to have quiet time. He said the Son of Man came to serve.
So good.
So you want to pray for us?
Yeah. Lord, I thank you for every person whose questions we answered. I pray that you would begin to reveal yourself to them. Lord, that they're seeking you, and I pray that they find you today. I pray that everyone watching finds you today, that you'd reveal yourself to them in the mundane day-to-day things. They would sense your presence and who you are, that you just be with them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.